Haberdasherdo!
Hi, it's Jane from Haberdasherdo. Welcome to the fourth episode of Sewing Bee Unpicked. This week was Reduce, Reuse and Recycle. Apologies for not doing one last week, which was African week. I just ran out of time. We had quite a lot going on during the week, and we had our Brother Sewing Machines launch, and I just didn't have enough time to do it. I also struggled to find any patterns as well, so I hope you didn't miss me too much. Anyway, I'm back this week. So the contestants had to make a zero waste pair of trousers. Then they upcycled tote bags into a top in the transformation challenge, and then the made to measure was to transform crochet blankets into a wearable garment or an outfit. So more of that one later. So the first thing they did was to make there was zero waste trousers. So zero waste is a way of using every single piece of fabric so that there are no scraps left over. So I don't know if you're anything like me, but if there's any scraps left over, if they're big scraps, they go into my little stash and then they stay there for years and I don't do anything with them. But I did take up some foundation paper piecing, which is making little pictures, like kind of a applique patchwork pictures out of things. So maybe I'll do a workshop on that one day. It's a way of using up all your scraps. If you don't want scraps, then zero waste patterns is a way to go. Quite often you don't get a pattern piece, you just get some measurements which you draw directly onto your paper, or onto your fabric, sorry. So the contestants had to do a bit of maths. They were given a curved piece, which I think was for the crotch seam shape, and also for that doubled as the patch pocket on the back. So the design was a drawstring waist, and with side seam, inseam pockets on the side, and then two big patch pockets on the back, which had a curved edge, which was the undoing of some of the contestants. So they needed to choose a fabric because of the design of the trousers, because they don't have a lot of shape to them. They're cut very oblong. So there's not a lot of shape to them. There's not always the most flattering shape with a drawstring. If you've got a bit of a tummy like me, then it's not going to be the most flattering to wear. So you didn't want a fabric that was going to be too stiff, but equally not too floppy either, because it needed a little bit of structure. So the ones that were good were Asma's snakeskin print fabric, although I did think her fabric was a little bit stiff, but they were beautifully made as ever, and also Mia's pale pink and Vicky's pink floral trousers. They were both well made. In the middle were Tony W's in the dark blue. His were very smart, but they had a tuck. He'd caught the seam on the crotch seam, which is actually quite a major place to have a tuck. You'd have to unpick that and do that again. Lauren's in pale blue, but she'd not done the side pockets very well. I don't think it had caught in properly. And Lizzie's tartan trousers, I'm not quite sure why hers didn't do better. There was obviously something about them, but I thought they looked quite good, quite pajama-y, but that's what drawstring trousers are quite good for pajamas. And then struggling at the bottom were Matthew's blue and white floral. I think the fabric was a bit stiff. His pockets, because of they had to do the curve for the patch pockets on the back, it's because his fabric was quite stiff. He couldn't get a nice even curve, so his pockets looked a bit angular. One way to do that is to sew a line of stitching just ½ an inch from the edge in that curve, and then you've got that line of stitching. You can press that line of stitching over. You've got a line to follow. That's one way of getting over that. Fauve's black floral trousers, the hem was all over the place, and she'd cut them slightly wrong, so one side panel was shorter than the others. Maybe she'd cut them all a bit short, then they might not have noticed. And then Posty Tony with the hat, he had a bit of a nightmare with his side pockets, his inseam side pockets, which I found surprising, because I thought that would be a fairly straightforward thing for them to do. And then also his patch pockets, he didn't do the big turnover at the top, so he had these massive pockets. But maybe Posties like big pockets, I don't know. So I picked out a few patterns for the drawstring trousers. We haven't got any zero waste patterns, but I've got some similar kind of design ones which don't create a lot of waste, I'm guessing. So the most likely pattern that they used is this one, McCall's 8118. It's actually like a paper bag waist, they call it, and it's elastic in the top, but you could do a drawstring if you prefer. There's that one. There's this one, 7576. I've actually done E down here before, and just pulled them in at the bottom with elastic to make some what I call travel trousers. They're very comfortable for travelling if you're doing long flights or anything like that. The rest of the pattern, it's kind of got these kind of gathered pieces on the pattern, but it's quite a useful one to have. 8057 is just a elastic waist straight leg trouser with side pockets, and this is a new one out with McCall's 8367. It's a bit updated of the last one I just showed you. It's got a wider waistband with sewn in elastic, and then it's got the elastic cuffs at the bottom. There's also this detail at the bottom of the leg. And then if, like me, you've got a bit of a tummy and a drawstring waist isn't the most flattering, then there's a couple of designs here with a more fitted waist, possibly with elastic at the back. 8206. And this one, 7131. I've actually made this one. It's this elastic at the back. I've made the culottes. That's a nice pattern, and they're quite flattering. And then, taking the zero waist theme, I thought this pattern, although I haven't actually looked at it, but 8326, it's a many tiered skirt. So you're going to cut the tiers in oblongs the width of the fabric. So it's going to use up most of the fabric, leaving you with very little waist, I would have thought. And that has got an elastic waist as well. So that's the patterns. So the transformation challenge was tote bags to tops. They said that they were looking for print and colour combinations as well as the sewing. So Asma's peplum top came out tops. Haha, see what I did there. It had quite a clever sleeve detail, and she'd used a different fabric for that, and then it was sort of quite fitted, and then with a little peplum at the bottom. I also thought Lizzie's boat neck top for the allotment, it had that kind of high boat neck top. It had the bee on the back, flamingos on the front, but it was very clever piecing together and in little sleeves. I thought that was very cute. Mia's bikini top and rear skirt thing somehow came third. I'm not quite sure how. And then struggling at the bottom were Vicky's mustard and blue combo. I don't think they like the colours, which kind of let her down a bit, but the sewing was okay. Tony W's kind of blue creation, and Lauren's peachy pink palm trees and bees ensemble didn't get the vote from the judges. So moving on to the made to measure, which was crochet blankets, secondhand crochet blankets into a wearable outfit. I got quite upset at this challenge because they took some beautiful, not always beautiful, crochet blankets, and I know the work that goes into those blankets, and they cut them up and made them into sometimes not very wearable clothing. And yeah, I just thought about all the work that had gone into making those blankets, and they were cutting them up. Anyway, so it's quite a tricky challenge, as crochet is going to come undone as you cut it, and I think some of them used masking tape on the edges. They didn't really show very clearly how they did that. Also, it's quite holey, so stitching it together, that you're going to have big holes. So I think a way around that, which is what Mia did and possibly a couple of others, is they put a stabilizer or fabric on the back, ironed it on the back, so that made it a more solid piece of material that they could then work with. So there were a few triumphs and there were a few shockers. You had to be careful of the design of the shape of the item that you were going to make. So Matthew came unstuck because his design was sort of semi-fitted at the top and then like a gathered skirt, and with a crochet blanket that's just going to make bulk and it's not going to hang properly. So that's where he came unstuck. Lizzie used the bulk for structure on that very clever red jacket that she did over her dress. So she used the bulk to make kind of pleats and to create those kind of puffy sleeves. So she was very clever how she used the bulk to create shape. So Fauve and Matthew struggled on this. Fauve's was a red, white and blue dress, which was just a bit shapeless, and it wasn't very neatly done. I don't think she backed it with anything. She didn't put any stabiliser on, so she struggled with that. So Asma's purple coat creation with the white flowers, I don't think the colour helped. It was quite a stark, I don't mean that, quite a bright purple, and then it had these white flowers, and then she tried to kind of match it up with this kind of white bib thing at the front. I didn't really quite understand it, but the coat at the back was quite nicely kind of pleated at the back to be sort of Regency coat kind of style. Vicky's granny square dress was lovely, but she cut up her baby's blanket to make the sleeves, and then they didn't like the sleeves, and they said several times that they didn't like the sleeves, so that kind of broke my heart a little bit, that she'd cut up her baby's blanket and they didn't even like it. Tony's festival trousers were quite fun. They were the big squares, and he'd matched up the squares so everything was in line, so that was nice. Got to be a slim figure to wear that though, haven't you? Pull that one off. And Lauren's beige trousers with the chevron detail, in the rust and brown chevron detail, and then she kept the chevron shape as the hem, which was a clever use of the hem, so that worked well. And then Lizzie's dress, the crochet dress, and then the little jacket over the top, and then Mia's two-piece Chanel style suit was really lovely, and the colours in it were absolutely wonderful. Whether she'd made that blanket herself and then cut it up, I don't know, but it worked, and that was a very deserved winner. So at the end of that, it was really sorry, looking at my crib sheet, Fauve and Matthew who were both in last place. So Matthew was the one who had a bit of a shocker on that made to measure, so unfortunately he had to go. So there we go. Next week is, I can't remember what they said next week was, so we'll have to wait and see. All right, I hope you have a good week. Bye.